Hey everyone, my name is Tavares Terry. I am the director of our Diversity, Equity, Access, and Inclusion program here at WaTech. And today I have the pleasure of talking to Director Megan Matthews of our Office of Equity. So I wanted to start with, how do you feel about the last 12 months of what we've done in the state as far as equity goes? And how are you feeling about the next 12 months, or what are you excited about?
Yeah, thank you, Tavares, and it's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me into this conversation with you this morning, although people may be watching it at a different time, right? So yeah, a little bit about me. So I am born and raised in Washington State. I was born in Tacoma, went to Stanley Elementary School, for those of you who,
Shout out Stanley.
Right,
Know it.
right. I graduated from Lincoln High School. And now I live in Olympia. And, I grew up in a family with not a lot of resources, was on assistance. And so I have a unique perspective when we're talking about the people who we serve. Like, those are people that I know and that I was. And so then I started with the state in 2008, right at the beginning of the recession. So I was one of the last groups hired before the hiring freeze that happened that lasted for the next 5 years. And so, I have a unique experience there in an entry-level position in the state, and worked my way into the position I am now. You talked about, what does the next 12 months look like for the Office of Equity? And I think that's an important question. What I've been hearing from our state colleagues, my team members, is that, what does the next 12 months look like? We have an administration change. Equity is on attack, right? Folks, there's a lot of fear, which I would say, so I want to answer that part of your question is, we are, now that we have more staff in our office, we have 34 people, team members in our office today, very excited. We have the capacity to hire 39. So we're working on hiring those last individuals to join our team so that we can create a strategic plan around accountability. In our statute, we're mandated to create dashboards and outcomes measures around creating impact for Washingtonians. So when I talk to our state colleagues, we're really busy every day, but what I care about is, have we made a difference? Can you tell me if what you're doing day in, day out is making a difference? Because that's what our community members want to know, right? And that's why there's this distrust of government, because people don't feel like the government is working for them, with them in mind. So accountability, and we're working on communications, because as a state, we don't do a good job of communicating about what we're doing.
I'm sorry. Say that part again.
Right? We don't. We don't do a good job of communicating proactively about what we're doing. And so people are like, it's in this mammoth of a thing. The state is this huge thing. Nobody knows what we're doing until there's a problem. And then we communicate, no, this is what we were really doing. And we don't communicate in a way that is accessible for people. Right? We don't plain talk, plain language. There's a new executive order around that. We have to communicate in the way people can receive the information. We have to communicate in different languages. We have to communicate not only from our websites, which is also a thing that we do, is communicate digitally when we know not everybody has access to the internet, right? And so my goal is that every person in Washington State knows about the Office of Equity, knows about the work that state government is doing. I want a comprehensive and intentional communication strategy, and I want to work with our state agencies to help share information about what it is we're doing in a way that people can receive in an innovative and creative way, right? Like, nobody's reading our 20-page documents, So we need to think about different ways to communicate with folks.
How they take the information in.
Right. We're also working on our access and accessibility. So digital equity is huge, right? We're working with WaTech, Office of Equity, WaTech, Commerce, other state agencies, working together on that. And language access, our universal access and belonging plan, really excited about that. And then, like I said, our consultation as well. So we are building our strategic plan to lay a strong foundation so that we can create and facilitate that policy and systems change. That's what the next 12 months look like for us. In addition, and our unifying goal is to embed the Office of Equity into Washington state government so that we're here for generations to come until we're no longer needed because Washington state just functions with equity in mind.
You talked about, working together. I would say breaking down the silos that we have sometimes in government to that. What do you think prevents us from getting to that point? Like, what prevents us? It seems like whatever we put our mind to in other ways, I think COVID really showed this, that we can do what we need to do when given the proper motivation. So what do you think prevents us from getting away from that activities-based mentality?
I mean, there's a lot of things. For me, I think that the state has done a really good job of implementing a factory mindset. I came in a entry level position, and I had a set, defined role with duties and responsibilities, and kind of a frame of work that I could do. And I call it a widget based, right? Where we give everyone, here's your thing to do, and we all do our little pieces in this big organization to advance whatever the mission is for that agency. And so if I only have my thing and I only have to worry about my thing, I don't have to worry about what anybody else is doing. But what that creates, in my opinion, is gaps that people fall through because our agencies are not working in isolation. The missions and mandates of our agencies overlap. But because we're not focused on how our actions influence or affect another agency or even other team members within the same agency, we're creating more gaps and we're creating that harm that our communities experience. And now we have to move past that kind of factory mindset to say, no, we need to think holistically, which is a huge shift. But it's imperative. And I think, having the Office of Equity now, who's that platform that can say, hey, we have to deal with this holistically. Let's come together. And I'll tell you, people are excited about that. Yeah, we'll show up. What do you need? Where can we be? How can we help? And so it's not a lack of desire, which I think I feel really privileged because in many places, I think people are dealing with the desire as an issue. We have the desire. Now we have this platform as the office to say, let's come together so we can start exercising that muscle. We can start working that muscle of collaboration within agencies and external agencies as well, until it becomes norm. My goal is that one day, now it's not going to be tomorrow, but one day there is no Office of Equity. Because equity is just how Washington State functions. When we are doing our work, we're thinking about who might this impact in not a good way, right? My goal is to serve. So who am I not serving if I do these things this way? If we're all working in our jobs in that mindset, one day I believe we won't need the Office of Equity.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When we think about, like some barriers to achieving the goals that we have, when you think about equity itself and the work that goes along with it, it seems like it's this add-on to what we do. And you and I know that that's not the goal, right? Like you just stated. But a lot of the attitudes about why these programs are needed or not needed seem to come from an identity place. Often those loudest voices against this work are coming from that place of where they benefit from the systems that are in place. So it makes it easy to say, hey, we don't need to do that because this is how I see life, right? From your standpoint, being someone who doesn't come from that group, how does that work for you?
Yeah, when I'm having these conversations with folks, I'm like, how do I help us see ourselves holistically? We're a society, we're a community, right? What happens to folks in our communities impacts the rest of us. And so somehow we've gotten to this idea that I can only focus on the individual, myself, my family, the people that I care about, and that's it. But right now we're in a time that I think is really critical, right? We have too many people sleeping on our streets. We have kids who are in school hungry throughout the day. We have too many people that we have incarcerated. We have too many people who can't figure out how to pay their rent and their gas and their food. We have people who can't pay, who are paying too much of their income, a percentage of their income, to have a roof over their heads. People who are living in 2 or 3 different households under one roof just so they can pay their rent. These are critical issues, right? In rural communities, we have folks who it takes too far to get to a hospital. They can't get to jobs. They don't have enough resources. They have to drive everywhere, right? I mean, these are critical issues that we have as a society have to deal with. We all need to think about the sum of us, Heather McGee, the sum of us, right? If we are going to find a way through all of this. And I think that mentality of being concerned only about the individual is a barrier, is a huge barrier, because the reality is when poverty is high, so does crime. So you can think that, well, I have a roof over my head, it should impact me, but now you're worried about crime.
In terms of equity in AI, do you see that as a challenge that we need to tackle, or do you find that that might be something that we try to look at after the fact again, like we've done so many other things?
Yeah, I think just overall government needs to be more proactive. The philosophy that we have taken is how we evaluate risk, right? What does risk mean? Because we are making decisions about what we believe and prioritize as risk to the contrary of other things, right? And our thing of risk is, oh no, if we use technology in there, and there are some things that are real, right? So if someone hacks into our system, if someone utilizes the technology we're using to create harm for people, those are very real risks. Also, I think government needs to provide the guardrails so that folks have the ability to participate in our economy and not get left behind, or access resources and tools. The reason why we have the digital equity gaps is because I don't think government's done a good job of ensuring that everyone has access to internet and the technology to use it and the skills to know how to use it. We haven't done that. And so AI is an opportunity for us to be on the forefront while we're now dealing with the digital equity issues, but also be on the forefront to say, here's how we should use this and continue learning, because I think AI is evolving every day, right? So we need to be on the cusp of that to make sure that Washingtonians continue and receive the access, but also that we can make sure that people can stay as safe as possible as we are discovering what this is. So I think that we need to be more proactive. We need to be more thoughtful in how we approach the new technologies, but we can't sit by the wayside and wait until the private sector or nonprofit has figured it out and then say, okay, this is how we're going to use it.
So our own Nick Stowe, shout out to Nick Stowe, he brings up with AI that the inputs are important. What we input is going to affect what we get out. We just recently had a conversation celebrating Women's History Month in our own organization. And when we were putting together a presentation, we asked AI for some prompts about occupations that women have had throughout the decades. And the information that we got back was homogenous, to say the least, and very limiting. And I think it really points to the fact that even with the best of intention, the systems that we operate with in technology are only as good as how we teach them. So what are your thoughts about that? Because it seems like there's bias that's already built into a system. So how do we deal with that?
The technology is not Megan's skill set. So just so we're clear about that, okay? But from what I understand, it relies on what already exists on the internet, by and large, right? AI is pulling from all these different sources to produce these images. And that also has to do with who has access, who is able to add information to the internet, whose perspectives are part of that, right? And so, yes, it's not surprising that there are perspectives that are lacking, that AI would be insufficient to really produce the beauty of what people, of the representation, I guess I would say. And so we have to be thoughtful about that, right? And that's why when I talk about diversity of thought, it's important. Who is in your circle at your jobs matter. I have been, talking to different community members and youth, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, somebody who understands our perspective of growing up without a lot of resources and having to traverse all of these barriers, right? The understanding of having to work 3 times as hard to get half as far, right? They tell me it's important to see me in this role, and I know it too because I wasn't sure if I could do this role. I hadn't seen a lot of representation of someone like me who grew up without a lot of resources, a Black woman, and I'm right now the only Black woman director in Washington state government. It matters from an idea that children can then see and dream, but it also matters because we can create things that don't do as much harm or don't do harm to those same children so that they have more confidence in themselves and they see them as a participant in our society. And so I would say that representation is so critical that we have to be serious about it. It's not going to be enough for me. Some colleagues will say, we tried really hard. It's not acceptable. Don't try, just do, right? Figure out how to get that representation. Figure out how to do it in a way where people have power, where those folks who represent those communities actually can participate in the decision making of the solutions we create.
Representation. You said a lot about that, and I think that's important. From my own standpoint, coming up, I had some doubts about a role that I was in previously because it felt like people wanted to put me in that role because they liked me, and I didn't feel prepared for that. In terms of preparing our next generation of leaders, what are you excited about in terms of that? Bringing people in our recruitment, preparing them, leadership development, all of those things.
Yes, yes. So for me, I want to be innovative and creative, right? We don't have the pathways that exist right now to create that opportunity for folks. So what do we need to do? OFM recently created this mentorship program. I am mentoring a colleague in our state. I also want to create pathways for our students and how do we get into the schools and let them know what opportunities exist in the state, what are the barriers there existing, and how can we be proactive in creating access, barrier-free access for those students to at least get an idea so that it's not just the same. I mean, when I was growing up, I was like, I could be a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, a police officer, or firefighter, right? And yes, you can be those things, and there's more things that you can do. We have to help expose youth to those opportunities. We have to also do a better job of career development with our current state employees.
So thank you for your time. But before we get out of here, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you something related to Women's History Month. It is March. Hopefully by the time people see this, it's still March. But when we talked about it, it was March. And women have played a big role throughout our society, oftentimes not getting the credit that they deserve for that. And now, as we see more of an emphasis on, like you said, here are all the jobs that they said I can do, and here are all the things that I can do. As a woman, particularly as a woman of color, like, what excites you, or what bothers you, or what do you want to address in terms of the overall status of women, not just in state government, but in society?
And so for me, I want us to understand that Black women are under attack and that Megan Matthews has experienced that as well in Washington state. So I would ask us to make sure that when we're asking things, proof, show me that you're qualified for this job, these different things that we don't ask of other people, that we just assume that other people are qualified, to check ourselves. I would say that to be careful about jumping on to narratives that are at play that you hear about Black women, because those are rooted in racism and misogyny, and those have a long, harmful past. I have experienced this personally in this line of work, and it is painful. I am not going to give up and I'm not going to stop because I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for the people that I love and care about and for everybody who's hurting in Washington state. And what I say is, we need you. We need everyone to support us. I would say that I'm really proud to be a Black woman. I'm proud of women in general. We are strong. We are fierce, right? We have the ability to change so much because we have many ways of influencing the systems. So I'm excited. I know that I am currently in this position because of the hard work of women that came before me, right? I wouldn't be here if not for their hard work. And I am grateful for the things that they gave. And I am ready for my turn to do whatever I can. I want to support in whatever way that I can to help move things forward so that things are easier for the next generation. My goal is that I can do my part to make the world better, to leave the world better than I found it.
Awesome. I love that. Love it. So I do want to thank you again for joining us and sharing your thoughts. I think the work that you're doing is important. Hey, thanks for watching this edition of Talking Equity with us with Director Matthews. This was brought to you by our community of practice, Wired. We're always looking for new people and new ideas, so please come out and join us and join in on the fun. Thank you for that.
Thank you for this opportunity to share. I want you to know you can visit the Office of Equity's newly launched website to learn more and to stay in communication with us at equity.wa.gov. Thank you.